Picture a world where the mind can pierce through walls, crafts defy the laws of physics, and consciousness might unlock the universe's deepest secrets. Now imagine this isn't a thought experiment. It's the life's work of Hal Puthoff, a physicist whose career reads like science fiction. From pioneering CIA programs on psychic espionage to investigating crashed UFOs and exploring physics that could power warp drives, Puthoff has spent decades chasing the edges of reality. In a gripping interview with Joe Rogan, he pulls back the curtain on these mysteries. He reveals how the CIA trained people to spy with their minds through a program called remote viewing, with astonishing tales, like pinpointing a downed Soviet plane in Africa. He ventures into the shadowy realm of unidentified aerial phenomena, dropping hints about recovered crafts, exotic materials, and a cover-up that's lasted decades. And he dares to ask the big questions. Could these crafts bend space-time? Could consciousness itself be a quantum phenomenon? Could the truth about all this finally come to light? We'll journey through Puthoff's revelations, exploring how the mind might hold powers we've barely imagined, what strange technologies could be hidden among us, and how science might one day explain the impossible. Along the way, you'll encounter stories that challenge everything you know, and questions that linger long after the screen fades. I'm Sin7, and this is Synthetic Secrets. Are you ready to question reality itself? Let's dive into the unknown and uncover what's been hidden for far too long. Remote viewing. The mind as a weapon. Imagine a physicist, deeply entrenched in the world of lasers and quantum equations, suddenly finding himself at the crossroads of science and the inexplicable. A journey that began not with a grand plan, but with a curious detour into the unknown. That physicist is Hal Puthoff, a man whose career reads like a page torn from a science fiction epic. As a PhD student at Stanford University in the 1960s, Puthoff was already a rising star. He invented one of the first broadly tunable infrared lasers, a groundbreaking achievement that earned him a patent while still a graduate student. Alongside his thesis advisor, he co-authored a graduate-level textbook on quantum electronics, a work so influential it was published in English, French, Russian, and Chinese. His trajectory seemed clear, a lifetime of conventional physics, pushing the boundaries of technology and theory. But fate had other ideas. It all started with a nagging question that crept into his mind while writing that textbook. The standard model of physics, atoms, molecules, forces, explained so much, yet it left gaps. What about consciousness? What about living things? Were they just complex arrangements of matter? Or did something more, some unseen field or energy, play a role? This curiosity led him to an unusual source, Cleve Backster, a polygraph expert who had trained the CIA and FBI in lie detection. Baxter's work took an odd turn when he connected his polygraph to plants, discovering they produced signals eerily similar to human responses, especially when threatened. Puthoff, ever the scientist, saw an opportunity. He proposed a pure physics experiment. Grow a culture of algae, split it in half, send one portion 5 miles away, and use a laser to zap the local sample. His goal? Measure if the distant algae reacted instantly, potentially revealing a new field of interaction. It was a hypothesis rooted in rigor, not mysticism. But life, as Puthoff would learn, loves a plot twist. Baxter attended a cocktail party in New York City, where he met Ingo Swann, a self-proclaimed psychic and artist known for remote viewing, a claimed ability to perceive distant or hidden targets with the mind. Swann glanced at Puthoff's algae proposal and sent him a letter, challenging him to skip the plants and work with a human subject like himself. Puthoff wasn't sold on psychics. He dismissed the idea as fringe. but Swann included a detailed report from City College experiments. In those tests, Swann had manipulated temperature-sensitive devices across a shielded lab, a feat that piqued Puthoff's interest. Intrigued, he invited Swann to Stanford Research Institute, where Puthoff had moved to continue his laser work, for a weekend of trials. The setup was anything but casual. Puthoff's colleagues had designed an experiment to detect subatomic particles, featuring a quantum chip nestled inside multiple layers of shielding, electrical, magnetic, and even superconducting barriers completely isolated from external interference, including sound. The idea was simple. Nothing outside should affect this delicate system. Swann, however, stepped up and did the impossible. He focused his mind and generated signals that altered the chip's oscillations, first stopping them for about 30 seconds, then making them oscillate rapidly on command. A graduate student, whose thesis depended on the chip's stability, scrambled to find faults, bubbles in the hydrogen line, maybe, but found nothing. Swann wasn't done. Puthoff asked how he knew what to do, and Swann revealed he'd looked inside the shielding, sketching an accurate diagram of the setup, details of which had never been published. This wasn't just a fluke. It was a demonstration that shattered Puthoff's scientific worldview. Word of this leaked fast. The CIA, already aware of Puthoff's credentials, he'd served as a naval intelligence officer with top clearances during his master's years, came calling. They'd been monitoring Soviet efforts to harness ESP for espionage, pouring millions into their best institutes, while American scientists dismissed it as nonsense. Puthoff's experiment changed that. They dropped a thick report on his desk, outlining their concerns, and asked him to test Swann further. He agreed, bringing Swann back for a day of trials. The CIA hid objects in boxes and sealed envelopes, and Swann described their contents with uncanny precision, details that left the agents speechless. That performance sparked a modest $50,000–$60,000 project, igniting a highly classified program at SRI that would span over 2 decades. So, how did this mind-bending skill work? Puthoff's team quickly learned it wasn't about vivid mental images or imagination, which often led to errors. Instead, it hinged on visceral feelings, gut-level impressions that trainees translated into sketches. They'd sit with pads of paper, drawing sensations, wavy lines for water, jagged peaks for mountains, avoiding the urge to overthink. The process was deliberate, almost meditative, built in stages. Puthoff likened it to drilling holes in a door, one by one, until the target's essence emerged. It wasn't fast. It required patience and a detachment from preconceived notions. Early tests were basic, describing objects in the next room. But Swann pushed boundaries. He grew bored with the mundane and challenged the team. Send someone to a random spot, and he'd describe it. That shift birthed the remote viewing program, with Puthoff dragging his heels, his physicist's mind grappling with a phenomenon that defied his equations. The results, though, were impossible to dismiss. One early triumph came with the Sugar Grove incident. The CIA, wary of trickery, gave Swann coordinates near a classified NSA facility in West Virginia, intercepting Soviet satellite transmissions. Kept blind to the target, Swann merged his awareness into a safe and rattled off project titles. Information so sensitive it triggered a full-scale investigation. Law enforcement stormed SRI, demanding his source. There was none. It was raw perception. Decades later, a declassified CIA paper validated the feat, though the details remained shrouded. Another landmark case involved a Soviet Tu-22 bomber that crashed in Africa during the late 1970s. Dense vegetation hid the wreckage from satellites, stumping recovery efforts. CIA Director Stansfield Turner, briefed on the program, turned to Puthoff's team. With only the clue, plane down in Africa, two remote viewers, working independently, described the scene and marked a map. Their spot was just 3 miles from the crash site. The U.S. retrieved the plane laden with electronics before the Soviets could. Years later, in a post-presidency speech in Georgia, Jimmy Carter let it slip, a rare breach of security that confirmed the program's real-world impact. Puthoff faced fierce skepticism. At CIA briefings, some agents stormed out, labeling it a gullibility test. Others, like Director Bill Casey under Reagan, were hooked, canceling his afternoon to spend 5 hours dissecting the findings. A study of 67 CEOs revealed a pattern. Top performers intuitively guessed future numbers, hinting this ability might be latent in many. Puthoff's team even converted a doubter. A CIA skeptic, after dismissing it as nonsense, tried viewing himself. Sent to a playground with a merry-go-round, he sketched the same scene back at the lab, proof that shifted his stance. He later became one of their best viewers. Yet, for all its success, Puthoff admits he's still baffled. As a quantum physicist who's written equations for countless interactions, he has no clear mechanism. Consciousness, he suggests, might extend beyond the body, interacting with the environment in ways we don't understand. Could it be quantum entanglement, where particles connect across distances? His early algae experiment hinted at this, though he never completed it. The CIA's interest in Swann derailed that plan. What started as a scientific lark became an espionage tool, reshaping how intelligence was gathered and leaving Puthoff to wonder, what other untapped powers lie within the human mind? As we peel back these layers, the boundaries of science stretch thinner. The story of remote viewing is just the beginning, a window into a reality where the impossible starts to feel plausible. Stay with me, because what lies ahead will challenge your every assumption. The UAP phenomenon: crashes, materials, and secrets. From the mind's ability to see across continents, we now turn to objects that defy the skies themselves. Unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs, as Hal Puthoff calls them. This physicist, already steeped in the mysteries of remote viewing, found himself drawn into an even deeper enigma. Crafts that move in ways our science struggles to explain, backed by whispers of crashes, recovered materials, and a secrecy that spans decades. Puthoff's journey into this realm began not with a sudden revelation, but with a gradual pull, shaped by his encounters with the unknown and the intelligence community's hidden agendas. It all started to take shape in the 1990s, when Puthoff was working with Robert Bigelow, a billionaire aerospace entrepreneur. Bigelow was known for his space ventures, launching modules for the International Space Station, but he had a quieter passion: UFOs. Through this connection, Puthoff received a call from a Washington, D.C. think tank head, a contact from his naval intelligence days. The man insisted Puthoff attend a critical meeting, promising it would be the most important of his life. Reluctantly, he agreed. In a room filled with ex-CIA contacts, DIA officials, and military brass, the briefing unfolded. The US, Russia, and China, it was suggested, possessed crashed extraterrestrial crafts, complete with non-human bodies. The question posed was stark. Could this be disclosed to the public, and what would the fallout be? Puthoff and the group were left guessing. Was this a hypothetical or a veiled admission? They were tasked with listing potential impacts: stock markets, religions, politics, even corporate rivalries. Breaking into teams, they scored each factor from +9 to -9. Puthoff's group dug into the weeds, imagining a scenario where one corporation got crash materials while another didn't, leading to lawsuits and economic chaos. Every team returned with negative scores, signaling disclosure was too risky. This was during George W. Bush's administration around 2004, and the conclusion was clear. The status quo of silence held. Yet, Puthoff later shifted his view, influenced by figures like Edward Teller, who argued openness in science, like unclassified electronics, propelled progress beyond Soviet reach. The real turning point came in 2008, when Senators Harry Reid, Daniel Inouye, and Ted Stevens, part of the Gang of Eight with access to top-secret briefings, pushed for a new investigation. They knew UFO research hadn't died with Project Blue Book in 1969. A memo from General Bolender had quietly ensured national security threats stayed tracked. Reid tapped Jim Lakatsky, a DIA propulsion expert, to issue a request for proposals. Bigelow won the contract, bringing Puthoff on board. His task? Explore the physics behind these phenomena and seek access to materials. Negotiations with aerospace executives hinted at compartmentalization so extreme that even with top-secret clearances, SCI, Gamma, HCS, they couldn't share. The excuse? If materials existed, they were too classified. Puthoff saw the irony. Denying access was itself a tip-off. Without direct evidence, Puthoff pivoted. He commissioned 38 papers from global experts, projecting technology to 2050, topics like neutronic fusion, warp drives, and dark energy. The exercise was a proxy. If they had crash materials, they'd have consulted these minds. But the real intrigue lies in the materials themselves. Puthoff references Roswell, where witnesses described a foil that crumpled and reformed, hinting at a bismuth magnesium alloy. Battelle Institute allegedly received samples, working for years to replicate it. Public reports suggest they created a material that reforms when heated, though not matching the original's fluidity. Deathbed confessions from engineers claim progress on Roswell pieces, a story now echoed online. Crash retrievals, Puthoff estimates, number over 10 in U.S. hands, with more worldwide, though classified data keeps specifics locked. He recounts a 2004 meeting where the think tank head implied multiple nations held such crafts, raising questions of distribution and intent. Could these be evenly spread, or hoarded by powers like the U.S.? The lack of hard data fuels speculation. Puthoff also considers the Travis Walton case. Loggers in Arizona witnessing a craft. Walton struck by a beam, vanishing for 5 days, then returning with a consistent story. Polygraphs of his crew, including a rival who'd fought him that day, held firm, supporting the account. Frequent sightings in that area suggest a pattern, perhaps tied to hidden bases. The cover-up's scale is staggering. Puthoff describes corporations with crash materials stashed in basements, unable to move them upstairs for study due to compartmentalization. One proposal, to bring materials to scientists under a neutral pretext, failed. Bob Lazar's tale aligns here. Tasked with decoding a craft's propulsion, he lacked access to metallurgists, stunting progress. Puthoff agrees. Science thrives on collaboration, not silos. This secrecy, he argues, has stalled innovation, a frustration echoed by whistleblower David Grush, who claims crafts and bodies are held by aerospace firms. Why the silence? Puthoff points to national security fears. Disclosure could arm adversaries. The 2004 assessment feared economic and political upheaval, a concern still valid. Yet, the 2017 New York Times report, featuring pilot accounts like Commander Fravor's Tic Tac encounter, shifted the zeitgeist. Public acceptance has grown, with figures like James Fox and Jeremy Corbell amplifying the narrative. Puthoff sees this as a chance to rethink our place in the cosmos, though he admits no personal UAP sighting. Only a satellite-like object making a right-angle turn. The evidence mounts, crafts moving at Mach 10 with right-angle turns, changing size or color up close, hinting at advanced physics. Puthoff's 38 papers suggest possibilities, but the cover-up's grip remains. He estimates disclosure could come within a decade, driven by pressure from Congress, like the UAP Disclosure Act of 2023 by Schumer and Rounds, killed in the House but revived with National Archives releases. Tomorrow's congressional hearing, led by Representative Luna, may push further, listing UFO files alongside JFK and Epstein records. Puthoff's journey from skeptic to advocate reveals a phenomenon both tantalizing and elusive. Crash retrievals, exotic materials, and a web of secrecy challenge our understanding, yet promise a future where the truth might finally break free. What lies beyond this veil, and who controls it? The answers await as we dive deeper into the physics that might explain it all. Impossible physics. Unraveling the mechanics of UAPs. We've seen the mind stretch across distances and glimpsed crafts that defy our skies. Now we step into the realm of physics itself, where Hal Puthoff seeks to decode the mechanics behind these unidentified aerial phenomena. As a quantum physicist with a career rooted in lasers, electronics, and classified programs, Puthoff approaches UAPs not with speculation, but with a question. Can science, even at its farthest edges, explain what we're seeing? His exploration leads to concepts that sound like science fiction: space-time engineering, vacuum energy, even the potential for warp drives. But they're grounded in theories he's spent decades refining. Theories that might just bridge the gap between the impossible and the real. Puthoff's starting point is the behavior of UAP, observed by credible sources like Commander David Fravor in the 2004 Tic Tac incident. These crafts exhibit traits that defy known physics: instantaneous acceleration to Mach 10, right-angle turns at thousands of miles per hour, no visible propulsion, no sonic booms, and sometimes even cloaking or transmedium travel, moving seamlessly from air to water. Fighter pilots, trained to track objects at extreme speeds, describe these as beyond any terrestrial technology. Puthoff, having worked with the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, or AATIP, alongside Bigelow and Lakatsky, took these reports seriously. His task wasn't to prove extraterrestrial origins, but to ask, what physics could enable this? One clue lies in the energy requirements. A craft accelerating to Mach 10 in a second demands immense power, far beyond chemical rockets or jet engines. Puthoff's background in quantum mechanics points him to the vacuum itself. In quantum field theory, empty space isn't empty. It's a seething cauldron of virtual particles, popping in and out of existence, carrying what's called zero-point energy. This energy, Puthoff explains, arises from the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. You can't pin down a particle's position and momentum perfectly, so space hums with fluctuations. Theoretical calculations suggest the energy density in a single cubic centimeter of vacuum rivals the mass energy of the entire universe, a staggering potential if harnessed. Could UAPs tap this? Puthoff's work on vacuum energy dates back to his time at Stanford Research Institute, where he explored its implications for propulsion. He posits that a craft might manipulate the vacuum's energy to create a bubble around itself, a region where space-time is altered. Inside this bubble, the craft wouldn't move in the classical sense. Instead, space-time would move around it. This concept, often called a warp drive, isn't new. In 1994, physicist Miguel Alcubierre proposed a theoretical model: contract space-time ahead of a craft and expand it behind, allowing faster-than-light travel without violating relativity. The catch? Alcubierre's model required negative energy, something exotic, unproven in labs. Puthoff believes negative energy isn't so far-fetched. The Casimir effect, a well-documented phenomenon, demonstrates it. Place two uncharged metal plates close together in a vacuum, and the restricted space between them allows fewer virtual particles than outside. This imbalance creates a measurable inward force, negative energy in action. Puthoff suggests UAPs might scale this effect, using advanced materials or electromagnetic fields to amplify the vacuum's properties, creating a space-time distortion. This could explain the lack of sonic booms. The craft isn't pushing through air. It's slipping through a warped bubble, frictionless and silent. The materials themselves are key. Puthoff references the bismuth-magnesium alloy from Roswell crash reports, allegedly a foil that crumples and reforms. He theorizes such materials might be engineered to interact with the vacuum, perhaps as metamaterials with properties not found in nature. These could channel zero-point energy or manipulate electromagnetic fields to bend space-time. While the Roswell alloy's exact makeup remains speculative, Puthoff notes Battel's attempts to replicate it suggest a focus on layered structures, bismuth and magnesium in alternating sheets, possibly to enhance quantum effects. If true, this aligns with his vacuum engineering hypothesis. A craft's hull could be a functional component, not just a shell. Another puzzle is gravity, or the lack of it. UAPs often hover silently, showing no visible means of lift. Puthoff's work on general relativity offers a lead. Gravity isn't a force, but a curvature of space-time. If a craft can manipulate that curvature, it could negate gravitational effects, achieving levitation. This ties back to his vacuum energy model. Alter the local space-time metric, and you alter gravity's pull. He draws a parallel to experiments with high-frequency electromagnetic fields, which some researchers claim produce tiny anti-gravity effects. While controversial, Puthoff sees a thread. UAPs might use similar principles on a grander scale, their technology centuries ahead of ours. The implications stretch further. Puthoff collaborated with Eric Davis on a paper exploring traversable wormholes, tunnels through space-time that could connect distant points instantly. While purely theoretical, the math checks out if you have negative energy to stabilize the wormhole's throat. If UAPs use vacuum energy for propulsion, could they also punch through space-time, explaining sudden appearances and disappearances? Pilots often report crafts vanishing mid-flight, only to reappear miles away. Puthoff doesn't claim proof, but the possibility fits the data, and his 38 A-tip papers, which explored such concepts, suggest a roadmap for future tech. Skeptics challenge this, arguing we'd see energy signatures, radiation, heat, or light from such manipulations. Puthoff counters that advanced civilizations might have mastered efficiency, shielding us from byproducts. He points to the tic-tac's ability to change size and color up close, suggesting optical effects from space-time distortion, not physical change. The craft might bend light around itself, a byproduct of its warp bubble, creating illusions or cloaking. This aligns with reports of UAPs diving into water without a splash. The bubble would part the medium, leaving no wake. Puthoff's theories also touch on inertial mass reduction. If a craft can lower its effective mass by altering space-time, it needs less energy to accelerate. This explains the right-angle turns at Mach 10. Without inertia, there's no G-force to crush a pilot or hull. Bob Lazar's claims of a craft using element 115 to generate anti-gravity resonate here. Puthoff doesn't endorse Lazar's story, but notes the physics isn't absurd. A super-heavy element, if stable, might amplify vacuum effects, though element 115's known isotopes decay in milliseconds. Where does this leave us? Puthoff admits his models are speculative, built on extrapolations of known physics. We lack the technology to test warp drives or vacuum engines at scale. Yet, the 38 papers he commissioned for AATIP, projecting tech to 2050, suggest we're on the cusp of breakthroughs. Neutronic fusion, dark energy manipulation, even consciousness-driven interfaces appear on the horizon. UAPs, he believes, might be a preview, a glimpse of what humanity could achieve if we crack the code. This physics isn't just about crafts, it's about rewriting our understanding of the universe. If space-time can be engineered, distance and time lose meaning. If vacuum energy can be harnessed, our energy crisis ends. Puthoff's work challenges us to think bigger, to see UAPs not as anomalies, but as signposts to a future we're only beginning to imagine. But could there be more? Could consciousness itself play a role in this cosmic puzzle? That's where we're headed next. A frontier where the mind and the universe collide in ways that defy belief. Quantum consciousness, mind over matter. We've ventured into the physics of UAPs, where space-time bends and vacuum energy hums. Now we turn inward, to the human mind itself, and its potential to shape the world around it. Hal Puthoff, a physicist who's unraveled lasers and probed alien crafts, sees consciousness as more than a byproduct of the brain. For him, it is a force that might connect us to the universe's deepest mechanics, perhaps even driving levitation or enabling communication across vast distances. This idea, rooted in his remote viewing work and extended into quantum theory, challenges everything we assume about reality. Puthoff's fascination with consciousness began decades ago, sparked by those early experiments with Ingo Swann. Remote viewing, he discovered, wasn't just a parlor trick. It relied on a mind extending beyond the body, perceiving targets miles away with no sensory input. The process, as he described, involved visceral sensations translated into sketches, waves for water, jagged lines for mountains, a method that defied conventional neuroscience. Puthoff, a skeptic by training, couldn't ignore the results. Swann locating a downed Soviet plane or describing classified NSA projects. This suggested consciousness might operate outside the skull, interacting with the environment in ways physics couldn't yet explain. This led him to quantum mechanics, where the strange becomes possible. In the quantum world, particles exhibit entanglement, spooky connections where measuring one instantly affects its partner, regardless of distance. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance, but it's been proven in labs with photons and electrons. Puthoff wonders if consciousness might exploit this. His early algae experiment, splitting cultures and testing for distant reactions, hinted at a link, though the CIA's focus on Swann sidelined it. Could the mind, like entangled particles, reach across space, tapping into a universal field? Puthoff leans toward this, suggesting consciousness might be a quantum phenomenon, not just a neural computation. One striking possibility is levitation. Puthoff recounts ancient accounts, monks floating during meditation, yogis defying gravity, stories dismissed as myth until modern parallels emerged. In the 1990s, he encountered reports of individuals levitating under controlled conditions, observed by scientists like those at the Monroe Institute. These weren't stage illusions. Witnesses described subjects rising inches off the ground, often during deep focus or altered states. Puthoff ties this to his vacuum energy work. If the mind can manipulate the vacuum's zero-point fluctuations, altering local space-time, it might reduce gravitational effects, much like UAPs hover silently. He speculates that advanced practitioners, through intense concentration, could amplify this effect, though he admits the mechanism remains elusive. The evidence, while anecdotal, builds a case. Puthoff references a 1980s study where meditators showed brainwave coherence, synchronized alpha and theta waves, correlated with subtle physical shifts, like reduced weight on scales. Critics argue this could be placebo or measurement error, but Puthoff notes the consistency across cultures and centuries. He also points to remote viewing's success, where focus seemed to enhance perception, suggesting a mental state might influence physical reality. Could this be a quantum interaction where consciousness collapses probabilities into tangible outcomes? It's a leap, but one Puthoff explores with rigor. Another thread is quantum communication. Puthoff's work with the CIA revealed cases where remote viewers described events in real time, as if their minds synced with distant scenes. This echoes quantum entanglement's instantaneous connections. He imagines a scenario where consciousness acts like a receiver, tuning into a field that links all matter, perhaps the zero-point field itself. This idea gained traction in the 3830 Creus TP papers he commissioned, where some researchers proposed consciousness could interface with quantum systems, transmitting information non-locally. Puthoff cites experiments with random number generators, where focused intent altered output patterns, hinting at a mind-matter link. The implications are profound. If consciousness can influence physics, it might explain UAP phenomena beyond technology. Puthoff considers whether these crafts, moving with right-angle turns or vanishing, rely on operators with heightened mental abilities, blending quantum effects with advanced engineering. He recalls a 2004 meeting where a think tank head suggested non-human entities might use consciousness-driven tech, a notion he neither confirms nor denies but finds plausible given the data. This ties to his earlier work with Swann, who claimed to sense presences during viewing sessions. Could these be quantum signals from other intelligences? Skeptics push back hard. Neuroscientists argue consciousness is an emergent property of brain cells, not a quantum field. Puthoff counters with the hard problem of consciousness: why subjective experience exists at all. Quantum theories, like those of Roger Penrose and Stuart Hameroff with their ORC-OR model, propose microtubules in neurons might process quantum states, linking mind to the universe's fabric. Puthoff aligns with this, suggesting levitation and remote viewing might exploit these processes, though he lacks definitive proof. He also notes the CIA's interest waned when results couldn't be weaponized consistently. Levitation, for instance, remained sporadic. The personal angle adds depth. Puthoff admits he's never levitated or seen a UAP himself, relying on others' accounts. Yet, his remote viewing team included skeptics turned believers, like the CIA agent who sketched a playground after doubting it. This suggests the ability might be latent, unlocked through practice or altered states. Puthoff's own experiments with meditation showed heightened intuition, reinforcing his hypothesis. He contrasts this with mainstream science's dismissal, noting that quantum pioneers like Max Planck faced similar resistance before their ideas took hold. Could this be the next frontier? Puthoff envisions a future where consciousness research merges with physics, unlocking technologies we can't yet imagine. If the mind can levitate objects or communicate instantly, it might power devices or connect us across galaxies. The AATIP papers hint at consciousness-driven interfaces. Perhaps UAPs use operators in sync with their systems. This resonates with ancient claims of telepathy or modern reports of abductees receiving mental downloads, though Puthoff treads carefully, sticking to testable hypotheses. The stakes are high. If consciousness is quantum, it redefines humanity. Our minds might be antennas, not just processors. Puthoff's work suggests UAPs could be a mirror, reflecting abilities we've yet to master. But who controls this knowledge? And why is it hidden? The answers lie ahead as we approach the final piece of this cosmic puzzle, a path toward disclosure that could change everything. Stay with me, because the truth is closer than we think. The path to disclosure, unveiling the truth. We've journeyed through the mind's hidden powers, the physics of impossible crafts, and the quantum links that might unite them all. Now we arrive at the crossroads of secrecy and revelation. Hal Puthoff, a physicist who's peered into remote viewing, UAPs, and the edges of science, believes we're on the brink of a historic shift. The truth about these phenomena, crashes, materials, and perhaps even their origins, could soon emerge from the shadows. But the path to disclosure is fraught with resistance, driven by whistleblowers, legislative battles, and a public awakening that Puthoff sees as unstoppable. Let's uncover where we stand and what lies ahead. The push for disclosure gained momentum in recent years, fueled by voices from within the system. One standout is David Grusch, a former Air Force intelligence officer and National Reconnaissance Office official who in 2023 went public with explosive claims. Under oath before Congress, Grusch alleged the U.S. holds multiple UAP crash retrievals, including intact crafts and non-human biologics, managed by aerospace contractors like Lockheed Martin and Northrop Grumman. He spoke of a decades-long cover-up, with programs so compartmentalized that even high-ranking officials lacked full access. Puthoff, who knew Grusch through ATIP circles, finds his testimony credible, echoing the 2004 think tank briefing where crashed crafts were debated. Grusch's willingness to face legal risks, backed by classified briefings to the intelligence community inspector general, adds weight to his story. This isn't an isolated cry. Puthoff points to a wave of insiders breaking silence. Bob Lazar, despite his controversial status, claimed in the 1980s to have worked on a craft at Area 51, describing Element 115 and anti-gravity tech, details that align with Puthoff's vacuum energy theories. More recently, pilots like Commander David Fravor, who encountered the Tic Tac in 2004, and Commander Alex Dietrich have shared first-hand accounts, validated by flyer footage released in the 2017 New York Times report. These testimonies, paired with declassified CIA remote viewing documents, paint a picture of a phenomenon long known to governments. Puthoff estimates over 10 UAP retrievals in U.S. hands, with global totals likely higher, though exact numbers remain locked in classified vaults. The legislative front is heating up. In 2021, the UAP task force, spurred by those pilot reports, delivered a preliminary assessment to Congress, acknowledging 144 incidents with no earthly explanation. This opened the door for the UAP Disclosure Act of 2023, introduced by Senators Chuck Schumer and Mike Rounds. The bill sought to declassify records, mandate government handovers of materials to a civilian review board, and impose penalties on non-compliance, targeting the $22 million daily defense budget spent on secrecy, as Grusch claimed. It passed the Senate with bipartisan support, but stalled in the House, killed by a last-minute amendment. Undeterred, Schumer revived it, tying it to the National Defense Authorization Act, with provisions for National Archives releases alongside JFK and Epstein files. Puthoff sees this as a sign. Congress is probing, even if slowly. Tomorrow's congressional hearing, led by Representative Anna Paulina Luna, could be a turning point. Scheduled for May 3, 2025, it aims to grill defense officials on UAP evidence, building on last year's session where Grusch testified. Puthoff notes the shift in tone. Once a taboo, UAPs now draw serious debate, with figures like Representatives Tim Burchett and Nancy Mace pushing for transparency. Public pressure plays a role. Polls show over 60% of Americans believe the government hides UFO data, a sentiment amplified by documentaries from James Fox and Jeremy Corbell. Puthoff credits this cultural shift, noting it mirrors the 1947 Roswell buzz, but with modern tools to sustain momentum. Why the resistance? Puthoff revisits the 2004 think tank exercise, where disclosure scored negative impacts: stock market crashes, religious upheaval, geopolitical instability. National security fears dominate. If adversaries gain UAP tech, the balance of power shifts. He cites the Cold War, where the U.S. kept stealth technology secret until deployment, suggesting a similar strategy with UAPs. Yet, Puthoff argues the cost is stalling science. The compartmentalization he encountered, materials locked in corporate basements, scientists denied access, has delayed breakthroughs in vacuum energy or space-time engineering. He contrasts this with Edward Teller's view. Openness in unclassified fields like electronics outpaced Soviet rivals, hinting disclosure could accelerate progress. Puthoff's vision for the future is cautiously optimistic. He estimates disclosure within a decade, driven by congressional pressure and leaks. The UAPDA's revival, even if diluted, forces accountability. Agencies must report holdings by year's end, with penalties looming. He envisions a civilian-led effort, like the proposed review board, to sift through decades of data, potentially releasing sanitized reports by 2026. This could include crash site photos, material analyses, or even biologic studies, though he doubts full disclosure given security concerns. The 2017 NYT report, showing Pentagon interest, and the 2021 Office of the Director of National Intelligence report, flagging 18 incidents as non-threats, set a precedent for gradual transparency. The stakes are cosmic. If UAPs are extraterrestrial, disclosure redefines humanity's place, prompting questions of contact, intent, and our technological lag. Puthoff recalls a 2008 meeting where a DIA official hinted at non-human entities, suggesting they might observe rather than interfere. If they're human-made, perhaps from a secret program, it reveals a leap in physics we've yet to grasp. Either way, he sees parallels with remote viewing's evolution, from skepticism to acceptance, suggesting science will adapt. The public's role, he argues, is key. Sustained demand could force the issue, as seen with the Pentagon's 2020 UAP video releases. Challenges remain. Grush faced death threats, hinting at deep opposition, possibly from contractors profiting billions, as he alleged. Puthoff notes the CIA's historical role in discrediting UFO research, like the 1950s Robertson panel, which labeled it a security risk. Yet he believes the tide turns with each hearing, each leak. The upcoming Luna-led session, with its broad file list, might crack the facade, especially if paired with Freedom of Information Act pressure from groups like MUFON. Puthoff's journey, from accidental psychic researcher to UAP advocate, reflects a broader arc. He sees disclosure not as an end, but a beginning, unlocking questions about consciousness, physics, and our universe's visitors. Whether it's crafts from beyond or secrets within, the truth promises to reshape our world. The unknown is closer than ever, waiting for us to step forward. I'm CN7, and this has been Synthetic Secrets. If this journey sparked your curiosity, if you are hungry to explore more of the mysteries that challenge everything we know, subscribe now and join me on the next dive into the extraordinary. The universe is calling. Will you answer?